So Nat Geo basically semi-greenlit this show, right? We sold it with the idea that it's a show about access, right? I get access to these crazy underworlds, criminal networks. Should I be concerned about my security? I don't know how to feel about this. And Nat Geo's like, okay, great. And you guys have a production company? Oh, yeah. We have we've done one feature doc, Science Fair at the time. If we make you believe that we know what we're doing, we can show you that we know what we're doing. I also like to work with people who are very good at what they do, who take the work they do seriously, but do not take themselves too seriously. I can't tell you enough how determination, persistence is important. It really is everything.
So a little over 10 years ago, I lied my way onto my first ever real TV job shooting a doc about heroin production for National Geographic in Mexico, and it's no exaggeration to say that my entire career has been built off that one gig. But it wasn't just the money and brand name recognition from Nat Geo that did it, it was the relationships that I formed with the crew that helped me the most over time. So today is a really fun video for me because we're coming full circle and heading over to the offices of Muck Media here in LA to talk to the one and only Mariana Van Zeller.
Award-winning investigative journalist Mariana Van Zeller.
I'm so happy every time I see you that you're alive and well.
She's the host of Trafficked on National Geographic, and she's been a guest on pretty much every big podcast you can think of, and she's just an all-round incredible documentary producer. She was also the host of that original show I said I lied my way onto before, and over the last decade, we've kept in touch, and I even shot an episode of Trafficked with her when they needed help. So in this conversation, we go into how she broke into the TV industry by selling carpets, how she and Muck Media transformed Trafficked from an unknown show to winning 5 Emmys last year, and how she would break into the documentary industry if she were doing it all again today. There's some amazing advice in here from one of the best to ever do it, so I hope you enjoy this talk as much as I did.
The first question you should ask is, what are my interviewing skills? And I will tell you never to have a list of questions before.
Never?
Ever.
How come?
Because I think it takes away, you become stuck on thinking what the questions you wanted to ask were, and it takes away from the conversation. It allows for less spontaneity.
It's true. I've seen that whenever you see an interviewer just sort of going, and then staring down at their laptop, you can just see the other person like, am I really talking to you? Yeah. How'd you learn that? In the journalism background?
Yeah, in the journalism background. And actually, I interviewed Daryl Morris once as a very young journalist. And I had a list of questions in front of me. And I asked him, you're one of the best interviewers in the world. Like, what advice do you give a young journalist, young journalist? And he was like, well, number one, don't do what you're doing. And I was like, and I couldn't understand it at the time, but the more I worked and the more I interviewed people, the more I realized that he was absolutely right. And that, there's something very important in making a person feel comfortable and in actively showing that you're curious and you're there because you want to hear every single thing about their lives and their stories.
Well, I already know half the things about your life and your stories. We'll try and get that out organically. For anybody watching, this is really fun. This is kind of a full circle moment because I got my first ever video job, but first ever real production job. Yeah. On your show in Mexico, and that was like 10 years ago.
Don't date us, Luke.
I mean, it was last summer, and we're all looking great.
Yeah.
I sort of halfway lied my way onto that shoot, and then...
I'm so happy you're mentioning this because I was trying to think, I have to figure out a way to mention how we first met. So I'm happy you're mentioning it. Yeah. I mean, we had a DP who broke his foot on his first day of a shoot and then somehow found out that there was this new DP in town in Mexico who was willing to come to this really dangerous part of Mexico. At the time was Acapulco, a lot of murders there. We were doing a story about cartel violence, and you were crazy enough to say, yeah, I'll hop on the next flight from Mexico City and meet you all in Acapulco and start reporting on the cartel.
I mean, it was, from my perspective, I was a photographer trying to get into TV, and my friend Uli was the fixer, and he called and he was like, don't screw me on this. I'm about to hook you up so hard. You better do a good job. And I just spent the entire trip down to Acapulco on YouTube trying to figure out how to C300 worked.
Oh my God, that's so amazing.
All of this stuff, like the reason that we're here right now is all tied back to that, because on that trip, I also met Pablo, who I ended up working for 2 years. And the reason I'm connected to the director of this show is because Pablo passed my name on to him. So not only the reason I'm in the Muck Media office, but the reason I'm in LA at all right now is all connected back to that show. And Hank as well. Without Pablo,
that's crazy.
Hank wouldn't have met Hank. I wouldn't have done Alone. So yeah.
That's amazing.
Full circle moment right now.
That's incredible. I had no idea.
Yeah.
Wow.
So we are now in the Muck Media offices.
Yeah, this is Muck Media.
When we met, Muck Media didn't exist.
That's right. Muck Media was in its beginnings. It was called something else, which I'm not going to tell you what it was. It wasn't a great name. And then eventually we changed the name and started an actual production company.
So what was that process like? How did you go, like you started in journalism, and then how did you move up through TV and eventually?
Yeah, I'm very lucky that I work with my best friends. We all met while working at a TV production, a TV channel. It was Al Gore's television channel called Current TV. And Darren's my husband, met two of our best friends in the world there. We were working together, doing a lot of reporting from all over the world. And then when we all sort of left Current TV and we said, why don't we still really want to work together. Let's figure out a way that we can continue doing it. And so we opened a production company. And then eventually we did our first feature documentary and started working with our fifth partner, Christina, who directed that. And she's been the best addition ever.
Was that Science Fair? Was that the
That was
first
Science
one?
Fair, yeah.
And so the Trafficked wasn't the first Muck Media project.
No, it was actually, before Muck Media changed its name, we had done a few small docs for some production companies for some channels, some outlets. And then, but nothing as big as Science Fair. And then Science Fair came about. It was produced, made by Muck Media, sold to National Geographic, and then it won Sundance. It premiered at Sundance, won the Audience Award at Sundance, went on to win the Audience Award at South by Southwest and a bunch of other film festivals. And at the same time, I was a correspondent on Explorer, an Audiio show, and they started talking to me that they wanted to build a show around me. And I said, well, I'll do it. I love it, but I want to do it with my company. So I got Muck Media involved, and that was how Trafficked started.
I remember when I first realized it was going to go really big I remember when LL Cool J started tweeting about it. Like back, was that season 1?
It was Mr. T.
Was it Mr. T?
Ice-T. It was Ice-T.
Ice-T. Yeah,
Sorry.
not Mr. T.
That's
Ice-T's way closer to LL Cool.
Okay, full disclosure, there are so many American pop culture references that I don't get. I grew up in Portugal, and I was in Portugal until I was 24 years old. So my friends constantly make fun of me because there are so many pop culture references that I am like,
the
what?
Portuguese talking about American pop culture.
Exactly.
Yeah,
It's not our
Ice-T started tweeting about it. He was like, this is the best show or whatever.
Yeah, and I think I tweeted back something about... I tweeted back. I don't know. It was when I realized, oh, wow, this is getting some traction. Yeah. Because up until then, I'd done some good journalism, but nothing of that level that people like I see when we watch.
Yeah, I mean, Explorer was great, but most people had never really interacted with it, right? It was a bit more of a niche thing, whereas I feel like Trafficked. And then since then, you've been on like huge publicity things. Joe Rogan,
I've been 4 times.
Four times.
You do some wild stuff, lady.
Joe Rogan actually comes pre-Trafficked. He had watched one of the docs we'd done for Current TV and reached out and was a big fan. It's called The Oxycontin Express, about the opiate crisis in America. And he tweeted it also. He said, everybody should watch this doc. I reached out to him. We became connected. And then he invited me on his podcast when it was still at his home here in LA. So that was the first time. And then Trafficked started, and then I've been, since Trafficked started, I've been on his podcast 3 times. He's a big fan of the show and the work that I do, which is
I think that's a pretty big benchmark in terms of popularity, right? I want to get into Trafficked and how you built that up. But first, how did you go from Portugal to investigative
journalism? I grew up in Portugal, pretty much decided I wanted to be a journalist when I was 12 years old. I used to watch the nightly news with my family in Portugal. It was mandatory viewing every night. And I used to think that the journalists, the anchors on television were just the smartest people in the world. They'd been talking about, what was happening in China, the economy in Brazil, the protests in I don't know where. And I was just like, how can they retain so much information? These are geniuses. I had no idea they were reading from a teleprompter. But in that moment, I was like, okay, I want to be as smart as them. I want to know as much about the world as they do. So I went to college in Portugal, and then I started applying to Columbia University journalism school. And I didn't get in the first year. I didn't get in the second year. I was put on a wait list, but I didn't get in. And then the third year, I decided I was going to fly to New York, even though they absolutely discouraged journalists or foreign journalists from doing, or foreign applicants from doing that. But I flew to New York and I knocked on the dean's door and I introduced myself and I said, my name's Mariana. I really want to go to this school. And he sat me down. We spoke for an hour, and that year I was accepted. Things happen for a reason all the time. And it was, in my case, what happened that year is that I arrived in August, and a month later, it's my first time living in New York. And a month later, 9/11 happened. And at that point, I wanted to do sort of nightly news type of journalism, quick
like
hits.
A reporter.
I'm not sure if I wanted to be on camera per se. I thought at the time that I wanted to be more of a producer. I wasn't sure, but I just loved everything that had to do with journalism. But I didn't have access to documentaries growing up, so I didn't even know that long-form journalism existed. I knew I didn't want to do print. I knew I liked television, but I didn't know that. I thought journalism, television, that means nightly news kind of stuff. At the same time, it was first Columbia University, I started being introduced to documentaries. And then 9/11 happened, and I was the only Portuguese journalist in Manhattan at the time. So I got a call from a Portuguese television station I'd worked at before coming to the United States. And they said, you're the only Portuguese journalist we know in Manhattan. Everybody else is outside and can't come into the city. Even though you have zero experience, we need you to go midtown, top of a building. And I got there, and there were journalists from all over the world. I mean, some of the people that I grew up watching that were my heroes. And I was 24, 25 years old, had so much makeup, was wearing a nylon white shirt that you should never wear on camera, and was so nervous. I was shaking, completely shaking. I was sweating and shaking and thinking that I was about to have a panic attack. And I hear this anchor's voice and saying, good night, everyone. Talks about terrorist attacks in New York, and Mariana Van Zeller is on the ground. And somehow I managed to say things. I managed to talk. And when I did my first live report, cameras off, I was so happy. I was jumping up and down. I thought, wow, I knew this was my path. I was going to be a journalist. I knew it. And then there's a moment where I walk down on the streets of New York, and I start seeing the first posters of people looking for their loved ones. And I get emotional every single time I talk about it, no matter how many times I tell this. But yeah, it was when you realize what's happening, the tragedy, the enormity of this horrible act. And that moment, it was for me completely life-changing, because I decided, okay, this kind of journalism I want to do is more complex, more trying to understand why things like this happen in the world. And so a year after graduating from Columbia, I moved to the Middle East, and I started doing sort of reporting on black markets that eventually became Trafficked some years later.
Hey everyone, I just wanted to take a quick break and give a shout out to the sponsor of today's video, Audiio, because as we talk about building a filmmaking business and career, one thing that everyone is going to need along the way is music. Virtually every edit you make for the rest of your career is going to feature music, and especially early on, it's important to have a good source of music you can use without getting sued. And for me, personally anyways, that's been almost exclusively Audiio for the last, I want to say 3 years. Whenever I do a spec project or shoot a personal film, or even for these YouTube videos, that's where I'm getting my music. And beyond the fact that it covers all my music needs and has a bunch of convenient AI tools that make finding the right track as easy as possible, the other reason I feel good about promoting Audiio here is because of the value. Hands down, it's just the best deal out there. And for viewers of this channel, you can get a full year of unlimited royalty-free music for 70% off, which brings the price down from almost $200 to just under $60. It's easily the best deal out there for this kind of service. And if you want to get that discount, click the link in the description and use the code Luke70 to save. Okay, back to Mariana.
You know what? I went to the Middle East. I went to Syria. I moved to Syria because I wanted to learn Arabic, because it was next to Iraq, and the war in Iraq had just started. And I knew that it was going to be the center of the news action for some time. It was there that I became really good friends with a Syrian who was from this border town that then became the center of Al-Qaeda and later on of ISIS. And he told me, look, all my friends are moving or are in the cover of darkness, are going into Iraq to fight against the Americans, dressed as civilians. And this is at the time when, President Bush was saying that this was the victory, America's victory, that Saddam Hussein had been toppled, and that Iraqis were welcoming the Americans with open arms. And that was just not what he was telling me. I was like, this is not being reported. Nobody's talking about this, like nowhere. And so I convinced him, do you mind if we can go, would you take me to your hometown? I had to pretend that I wasn't a journalist. But can you take me? I'm going just as your friend that was interested in religion. He said I should say that I was interested in Islam. And my husband, at the time, boyfriend, came to visit me at the same time. So with some money that we had saved, I was selling carpets at the time. That's how I sustained myself as a freelance journalist. I would buy these beautiful Syrian rugs and I would ship them to Portugal. My mom would hold these tea parties, would sell the rugs, and then would send me the money. So with the carpet money, we got some money together and we went to the border with Lebanon and bought a tiny little tourist camcorder. And with that, we filmed my first story as a freelance journalist about the Mujahideen crossing into Iraq to fight against the Americans.
I love that. I had not heard the carpet.
Oh yeah,
carpet sale. Mariana Van Zeller carpet sale.
It was a really good carpet salesman. You have no idea. It was making.
I have some idea. I could see it. I'd buy a carpet from you.
I had a good eye.
How much you want for this carpet? It's an interest. There's an interesting learning lesson there in that both of our stories are very similar in that we both took jobs. Mine was for you, but we both took jobs that we weren't really prepared for.
Yeah.
That afterwards we're like, oh, I'm doing that.
Oh, 100%. I think there's a part of our jobs that to be able to get in, you have to sort of bull your way in, right? Sometimes you have to pretend like you know things that you don't, and then just make sure that you know them when you get there.
Yeah.
Right?
You need to be batting like just outside your comfort, not so far that you can't deliver, but just far enough. And you need to, everyone has some sort of lucky break story. And this is what drives people crazy. Like I talk to a lot of people because of YouTube and they're always looking for like a surefire roadmap that they can follow.
Yeah.
Like, no.
Oh, it's never like that.
At some point, some crazy thing will happen that you're not expecting and you can't plan for that.
Yeah. Absolutely.
That uncertainty, that lucky break stuff kind of drives people crazy because they want to know, you can't go to school and you can't treat it like an engineering job where you learn a certain amount and then you're qualified. It's sort of like if you're doing this thing on your own and you're getting better and better at it and you're just staying in the arena, eventually something will come and you jump on that opportunity. Yeah. But you can't manufacture that really.
No. For me, curiosity was what led me to Syria. But then my next place that I moved to after Syria, I moved to Brazil. And I speak Portuguese. Brazil is very rich in stories. It's a very big country, an important country, lots of crazy people. And I was like, okay, this is an edge that I have that others don't, which is the language. And having traveled to Brazil and feeling very comfortable, feeling like it's almost like a second home for me. So I moved to Rio de Janeiro and I ended up doing my first story ever for an American television station, which was about this big diamond mine, one of the biggest diamond mines in the world, where 30 miners were tortured and killed by the Indians that owned that land. And it all happened. It was the day I landed. I opened up the newspaper, the local newspaper, and one of the small stories was about that. And I was like, I circled it. And then that's the story that we ended up doing for an American TV station.
So what if you were, let's say your son wanted to go, well, does he want to do this?
He's unsure. He likes writing. At some point he wanted to be a lawyer and then he realized that's a really boring job. That's what he said. But he loves writing. So I think eventually...
Something in the media world. General creative, yeah. If he wanted to do exactly what you do now, and he didn't have a well-known mother who could help him, and father, but what would you tell him? Like, what advice would you give him to get one of these careers off the ground?
Don't let a no dissuade you. Like, I got 2 no's from Columbia University before I got almost 3 no's, right? If I hadn't traveled to Columbia. So never let a no dissuade you. Like, I can't tell you enough how determination, persistence is important. It really is everything. And also, like, find your edge. Find what is it that I have that others might not, and really explore that. I think to me, it's worked. It's worked for me.
Yeah, I think that's extremely true. I mean, the unfair edge, I was a guy in Mexico who could speak some Spanish and was there. That was my edge, but that was enough to get me.
Yeah, but also you were sociable. People liked you. they liked having you around, which is why you connected with Uli, and this is why Uli knew that you'd be a good person to come with us. If you were an asshole, we wouldn't be here today. Right?
That's true. Yeah, that
could also be your
the social engineering cannot be underestimated.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah, being a nice person. That was one of the names I wanted to call Muck Media, actually, was rule number 1. So you'd ask, what's rule number 1? Don't work with assholes. That's should always be the rule. But I also think, to add to what you were saying, I think authenticity too is super important in whatever job you do. It's just finding who you are, figuring out who you are. And then I work with so many different DPs, but it's always so great when you work with somebody who comes with a completely fresh, different concept. And those are the things that stand out, right? The stuff that doesn't look like everything else.
Yeah, it's true. And Trafficked really doesn't. And when I worked on it was just the one episode, the LSD episode with Fred, I was like, oh, okay, this is why, because, you've got the schedule set up and in a way that it allows time to really build those scenes. And that's why it looks different than most other shows.
Yeah, I think the cinematography of it was, I'd done similar stories about black markets before, but this was, we were trying to think of like a premium show for National Geographic, a brand that is known for its visuals. So how can we really elevate? And we brought in Fred Manu. And he'd worked at Parts Unknown for many years. He was one of Parts Unknown's, one of Bourdain's favorite DPs. And he had a completely different way of operating than I did. It was, at the beginning, it was like, why do you need 2 hours to set up a shot? I couldn't understand it. And then the more I started seeing the results and I started seeing how these actually what these look like, you realize, oh, this actually does matter, because this doesn't look like, journalism. This looks like a movie. Yeah. And I think that's partly why it became so successful.
So you started in journalism, right? That was the you wanted to be news. How did you move into, you were moved by this story, but how did you literally make the move from news into more long-form storytelling?
The first few stories I did as a freelance journalist were sort of like news magazine length. They were like 15, 20, 30-minute long. And then I started working at Current TV. There was a show called Vanguard. Initially, we did docs for them. Initially, it was also like 30 minutes. But then we realized that actually there was a bunch of really great stories out there. And we started doing 1-hour-long documentaries. So started expanding it. And then came Trafficked. And that's how it's been done. I have yet to do a feature doc. Muck Media has done a bunch. Darren, my husband, has done a bunch.
Yeah, well, Science Fair is really cool. I like Science.
Did you like it? It's so good.
Yeah, it's really
so
fun.
Good. It's such a fun watch, yeah. And so at Muck we do both. We do sort of series. Obviously, we do documentaries, and we're also exploring the fiction world.
So what is that process like of building up, would you call it a big budget doc series?
Yeah.
Yeah, relative to doc TV. It was a pretty serious thing.
Particularly nowadays, yes, absolutely.
So what was that process like?
It was super interesting. Another story that I'm going to tell you is, so Nat Geo basically semi-greenlit this show, right? And we sold it with the idea that it's a show about access, right? I get access into these crazy underworlds, criminal networks, and I'm going to bring the audience along for the ride on these crazy journeys. And Nat Geo was like, okay, great. And you guys have a production company? Oh, yeah. We have we've done one feature doc, Science Fair at the time. We are going to fly to LA to visit your office. We at the time we were across the street actually in a very small office that had, I think, a desk and a chair, maybe. It had nothing on the walls. And we had just moved from an even smaller office to this one, so we had no furniture. And we're like, okay, we have like 1 week to buy furniture, set this up, and pretend like we're a real serious production company. So we went out.
So you got this place?
No, it was across the street. It was much smaller than this space. And again, no furniture. So we had 1 week. We went out, bought furniture, bought like a conference table that we put chairs around. And then we thought, oh my God, there's like nothing that shows that we've produced anything. There's not a poster on the wall. There's nothing. And we went out and we basically created these fake posters. One was a film about El Chapo, the other one was a film about something related to drugs or something, I can't remember. But it was these fake posters for films that we would have wanted to make, but hadn't made yet.
Didn't exist.
And put them all on the wall. So we semi-looked like a real production company. And then the day of the visit, when these 3 Nat Geo people came to visit the office, we were 3 or 4 people at that time in the office, and we basically called a bunch of our friends and said, please come and work at your office. Pretend that this is a real
like you're editing stuff?
So Alfie, who's Christina's husband, was like on his computer. And at some point, one of the people from Nat Geo was like, oh, so you like working here? I was like, I'm just the husband. I'm just here. He hadn't gotten the memo.
You didn't know.
They just asked me to work from here.
Shut up, Alfie.
But again, it's sort of built your way into the industry. If they showed up and we told them, look, we've actually never done a series, we've done 1 feature, we have no idea what we're doing, they would have never greenlit. But we knew we could do it, right? If we make you believe that we know what we're doing, we can show you that we know what we're doing.
But you knew you could rise to the occasion. That's 100%. The thing, right? It's not a lie. It's just getting that first bit of trust.
100%.
The hiring process, was it all word of mouth, or did you, how do you find new people?
Yeah, it was mostly people that somebody that we knew had worked with before. Again, we relied heavily on deal at the time. We also had worked with several people that we really liked, producers, directors, and we started calling around. And, it's some, you never know what's going to work. We tried directors is really hard, particularly on a show like ours, because you have to know how to write, you have to know how to direct in the field, how to have a vision for what the show's about. It's not an easy show to put together because there's a lot of journalism involved and access, and things fall through all the time. But then you also have to be a really good writer, and you have to be good in post at putting a story together. So that's not always easy. So it was a lot of trying out people, and some people, this was not their cup of tea. Like for a lot of people, hanging out with the cartel and, masked gunmen is not the thing that they want to do in life.
Yeah.
It is what I want.
It's my unfair advantage. I was like, this sounds great.
Yeah.
I think that's an interesting point because this comes up again and again, like this idea that you don't get jobs because of your reel. You get jobs because someone likes you and recommends you, right? Like
100%.
We're here because of a personal recommendation.
Yeah. Which makes it even more important to, particularly when you're in beginning in this industry, whatever position you have, director, producer, camera, whatever you do, is, first of all, obviously, be nice. People want to hang out.
Rule number one.
Yeah, rule number 1. But also, just say yes to everything. Work your ass off. Just work.
Yeah, I think that's really important. I've always heard the expression, strike while the iron's hot, but then I heard it reframed into make the iron hot by striking. It's you do a whole bunch of stuff until one of these lucky breaks sort of finds you, and then you just run with it.
Yeah. I mean, particularly in the environment that we are right now, right? Which it's a little bit of a crisis for doc filmmakers and journalism series in general. So you have to constantly be doing a lot of things at the same time, be pitching a lot of things at the same time, and be willing to go the extra mile every single time.
So for someone who's sort of at a very high position in the industry, what is the current state of things? Is it good, bad? There
is no high position in the industry because everybody out there is having to, We went through the golden era of documentary filmmaking a few years ago, and that was great, and everybody was willing to put a lot of money into really premium documentary features or series. And I think we've unfortunately have started transitioning to more, less premium and more commercial, less quality documentary series and or reality TV shows. And I mean, of course, there's still some amazing stuff being done out there, but it's harder to sell. It's harder to sell ideas if it's not true crime.
Or has high IP, right? If you have celebrity IP.
Celebrities or true crime is what people want nowadays. And it's for shows like ours and for the work that we do. But that doesn't, it just says that you have to work harder and do better.
And do you think that these trends are just going to kind of continue, or do you think we're going to hit a breaking point where people are then sick of true crime?
I think so. I mean, we've gone through waves of different things that people, it was reality shows. Everybody wanted like the Big Brother kind of show, or the competition shows. I mean, those are back again a little bit. I actually love true crime, but I am getting to the end of there's only so many series I can watch where we're trying to figure out who killed who.
Yeah.
And so I'm kind of ready for something new.
Yeah, and I'm even optimistic that on a 5 to 10 year timeline, outlets like YouTube might be the place for big stuff like this.
100%. I mean, I'll come talk to you.
But I'm not making shows yet. But then when you look at the budgets that some of these YouTubers have to put towards their stuff, you're like, oh yeah, you could make a Trafficked on that kind of budget.
Let's do this together.
Let's go. Let's change Luke Forsyth into the Muck Media outlet. I mean,
seriously, let's try to figure it out.
Yeah, let's pitch something. I mean, I think that could be an option for people like us going forward, right? Like people want this kind of content.
Yeah, I'm currently I love podcasts. I listen to podcasts all the time. And I'm currently developing a podcast idea that has to do with sort of my access into the underworld and black markets. That is very much based on the work that I've done in the past. And immediately when you start talking podcasts these days, you have to talk YouTube too, because there has to be a video component. And how can we make this in a way that it ends up on YouTube too? So maybe we can talk about that. Seriously, do you want to work on a podcast YouTube thing with me?
Let's talk about it.
Let's do it.
I need more information, but yes, on theory, I'll give you 100% yes.
It's called the Bullshit Podcast.
Let's do it. We'll just tell our creative ways. Yeah, absolutely. Let's talk about that. That'd be fun.
Actually, that would be a good idea for a podcast. Like
how to lie your way into different stuff.
Yeah, people's stories about how they fake it until you make it.
Yeah. If someone wanted to get a job at Muck Media, for example, what are you looking for beyond just being really nice? Like, how is that even possible for someone?
So I think it's the same case with most production companies. We don't have our staff is based on the shows that we staff for a show. We don't staff for the production company. So when we have a show like Trafficked, we have over 20 people in the team. And in large, our hiring all comes according to what shows we're making at the time, or docs.
And I think that's true of most of the industry. There's no application you can fill out for I would like to apply for this job. You just kind of have to be out there and have your name.
Yeah. But I also I'm a believer, the first TV job I got for an American television station, the one about the diamonds, I sent an email to somebody for Frontline World. It was PBS's Frontline. At the time, I sent them an email. They didn't reply. I think I sent them a couple of emails. They never replied. And then basically I called, and the person who's in charge of this show at the time, she answered the phone, and I said, hey, I'm actually going to be I'm going to be in Boston. They're based in Boston. I'm going to be in Boston next week. It was a total lie. But because I'm going to be there, can I just come and see the office? And she said, yeah. And we had this idea that we wanted to pitch about the Brazilian diamond mines. And we went in.
That's the best. I'm so happy you said that, because I'm always telling people this. I get approached so many times with emails, and I'm like, it's so easy to ignore an email. But if you tell people, I'm going to be in your city on these dates, can I come by in the easiest way for you?
Yeah.
That's how you get a meeting.
Find your edge. Find what are you willing to do that others aren't or probably won't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sending DMs is the easiest thing in the world. And if it's easy, everyone else is doing the same thing. So go to where those people are, make it really easy for them to say yes.
Absolutely.
Okay. So Mariana, where can people find out more about you and your show?
Well, they can follow me on my social media, Instagram being the one that I use the most, Mariana VZ, and also Trafficked. The new season's coming out July 16. It's going to be on Audiio and on Hulu. And obviously, look at the work from Muck as well, muckmedia.com.
Probably muckmedia.com.
Because we just changed the website. I think it was muck.tv. Maybe.
Google it. I Googled it on the way over here. I Googled it this morning. And
don't tell my business partner.
If you look at Muck Media, you'll find it. Cool. Mariana, thank you so much.
Thank
Always
you
nice
so
to
much.
see you.
Oh, and you can catch us on our podcast
On
together
on
too.
the Bullshit podcast.
The Bullshit
Coming soon.
podcast coming soon.